Hi there, it's Tom Morgan here with another weekly update, and I put out a couple of blog posts this week, so I thought it would be good to start by going through those first and kind of talking around them a little bit and giving a bit of context to them. So the first one is a blog post about Microsoft Teams, and that Microsoft Teams kind of external / guest access, whatever it's going to be called, whatever the exact functionality is, but it's coming in June apparently. And it's funny, I think I certainly missed this initially in the announcement that accompanied Teams becoming generally available. I think maybe because Teams had been in beta for a long time, and then the date around it being GA was widely publicised, and so maybe we didn't scrutinise, or maybe I didn't scrutinise that blog post enough, because I kind of thought, I think we know everything here, I think we know what Teams looks like and what's coming, and missed this. But it was like a paragraph right at the end, pretty interesting, and I'm just going to read out the paragraph actually, because if you haven't read it, then you need to understand it to understand what I'm going to say next. So moving forward, we'll provide a regular rhythm of new features and capabilities. For example, we are targeting to deliver guest access capabilities in June, along with deeper integration with Outlook and a richer developer platform. So guest access capabilities in June. Now, we still don't really know what this means, but I think it's exciting because that's one of the things that's clearly missing from Teams. And I get it's probably a hard thing to do, which is why it wasn't there at GA, but it unlocks huge potential for people to use Teams in scenarios involving people who aren't part of your company. And I think that could be a huge use case for the way people collaborate, because yes, there's lots of collaboration that goes on inside companies where Teams could be really useful. But there's also a lot of collaboration that goes in between companies and between customers and businesses, and you can see lots of use cases in which Teams might be a really good place to do customer interaction. So that's quite exciting. We will look forward to June. It's really only just over a month away. It could be the end of June, I suppose. It could be more than that. It's probably naive thinking about it to assume it's going to be the 1st of June, but you never know. So that's interesting. This is also the number one most voted up feature in the user voice instance for this. So if you don't know, user voice is it's a site you can go and you can suggest things that should be made better with an application or with a process. And then people vote on them, and the idea is that the ones that get voted up the most are the ones people want the most, so they're the features you should write next. And Microsoft have really bought into this. They use user voice a lot. So there's a Skype for Business user voice, there's a Teams user voice, and in the Teams user voice, this feature, this external access feature, is the number one rated. It's got nearly 4,000 votes. So that's in user voice terms, that's a lot. So this is good to see. It's good to see two things, I guess. I think probably, to be fair, Microsoft were going to do this anyway. It didn't take the user voice voting to make it happen, but maybe it shifted priorities a little bit. I don't think we'll ever really know unless they tell us. But it's good that what people are asking for is what is going to be delivered. That will make people happy. So I think that's overall a positive, regardless of exactly how it came to be. So there's that. There's another blog post I put out actually, which follows up from that, which is a user voice thing, but it's slightly maybe more relevant to developers. And that is that Microsoft are actively working on a developer API for Teams. So that's exciting because not only, so there are already ways that developers can interact with teams. So leaving aside bots for a minute, because bots are kind of a whole separate thing, but you can write bots can interact with teams. There are also, within Teams, there are tabs in a conversation. Along the top, there's a tab line, and you can add your own tabs into that, and you can bring your content in from elsewhere into tabs. There's also connectors, which allow you to inject stuff into conversations and from other external data sources. So we already have those, but it sounds like what Microsoft are working on is a API to read and write Teams data. So to be able to kind of programmatically read a channel or a team, sorry. There's me using persistent chat terminology. I can't think why. Read a team and read messages from it, and I guess also write those messages in as well. So it'll be another interaction point for developers. And that's important because, well, there's two reasons it's important. Firstly, it underlines Microsoft's commitment to developers, and they've been very public about that. They want to make every application a communications-enabled application. This is a part of doing that. But it's also true that applications and ecosystems that have good developer support will be more successful than those that don't, because developers, by having those APIs, developers are able to weave these kind of products into people's business flows and into how people do work and do business. So bringing developer support is important. It's good to see that Microsoft are working on it. This might also be the developer capability that is coming in June that was mentioned in the blog post. Maybe, we don't know. That would be great. It'd be great to see it in June as well. The funny thing is I think there is already an API that is being used by the Teams website. That's a standard kind of development practice anyway, but I think that's what you see if you dig around in the kind of HTTP traffic that is Teams when you load up teams.microsoft.com. It looks like there's a thin front end and then an API behind the scenes that the front end is sending and receiving from. That's sensible design. It's a good practice. So there is already an API. There's a huge difference, though, between an API that you built for your website that your internal devs consume and an API that you want to make available to everybody. There's a lot of extra hurdles around security, around scale, in documentation and legal, and all that kind of stuff. And also you want to make it easier as well. It has to be easy to consume. So that process will take a long time, so it may well be that the API we see is very different from the API that gets used internally, and that's okay, I think. It's always nice when it's the same API, because that way you know that the team are incentivized to keep the API up to date, and it will always have the latest features because it's what the first-party apps use. That's not always possible, though, so I think regardless of, a first-party API would be great. If not, a kind of separate customer-facing API, that's okay as well. As long as it has the feature set, as long as it's usable. So I think it's just a good thing for teams. I think it's good for developers. I guess it's true that it narrows the gap even more between Teams and Skype for Business, because Skype for Business has a rich developer platform, rich developer capabilities. Teams is a newer product, but what we're seeing is that Microsoft seem keen to make sure that Teams has a similarly rich developer landscape. So that's good news for developers, if nothing else. So those kind of 2 blog posts I put out this week. Some other stuff happening as well. There was a really good write-up around Enterprise Connect, which happened a few weeks ago, by Dave Michaels from Talking Points, and I'll put the link in the show notes. But it was very frank write-up, I think, of the keynote, and it wasn't overwhelmingly positive. I don't think it was negative, but it was not overwhelmingly positive to the level of Microsoft announcements, which I think was interesting. I think it's good to get alternative points of view. I think you should go and read it. He was there, he heard the words, I wasn't, so I have to take his word, and I also have to take everyone else's word who was there, or I can obviously go and live stream the keynote. But there's something about being there, I think. There's the nuance, there's the atmosphere as well. So I think it was interesting. He makes a very interesting point actually right at the end of the article, which is that there weren't really any big names from the Skype for Business world. I mean, there weren't. So Gadeep was not there, obviously. Zig was not there, obviously. But I don't think it's immediately clear who is driving the vision right now. So maybe that's just a communication issue. Maybe it's just some internal stuff that needs to get worked out. I don't think it's necessarily a reason to panic, but I just think it's one of those loose ends that need tidying up. So I thought that was a good write-up. I think it was good to get a different point of view. Not that much other kind of news that I saw this week. I've been pretty heads down. I've been doing some actual development nearly all week. So Monday was a public holiday here in the UK, so it's a slightly shorter week. But whilst I have been at work, I've been heads down on some interesting development stuff, which you'll kind of see coming through the Medallion system streams, and I don't want to cross over the too much. But if you're interested in that, go and have a look at the Modality Systems social media stuff and Modality Labs as well. There's some stuff going on there. But anyway, all in all to say, I might have missed a couple of stories this week, but I don't think so. I didn't see anything else major. The only other good piece of news, excellent piece of news to come out this week, is that there is another UC Architects episode. So it's been about 6 months since the last one, so this one is definitely welcomed. I think we're all worried for a bit that they wouldn't find the time and stuff to get another one out of the bag, but because time is always an issue, and especially when you need to get more than one person together, which is the kind of how their podcasts tend to work. Those guys kind of hit off each other really well, so that makes scheduling a real issue. I heard a rumour that they might well have recorded this on Easter Sunday because it was the only time they were free, in which case good effort. I definitely wasn't doing that on Easter Sunday. I was eating chocolate like everybody else, but if those guys managed to get a episode recorded, then that is good achievement. So that should be on your playlist. Those episodes are definitely worth listening to. So there's a new one of those available. Get it from your iTunes or your favourite RSS or your favourite podcast aggregator, or go to theucarchitects.com and listen to it there. And that pretty much wraps it up for me this week, I think. A little bit delayed in getting this out because it's Saturday morning now. But to be honest, by the time I got back on Friday and got everything sorted, just ran out of time. So have a great weekend, what's left of it, and speak to you next week.